Let us pray. As Canadians and as Albertans, we give thanks for the precious gifts of freedom and peace which we enjoy. As members of this Legislative Assembly, we rededicate ourselves to the valued traditions of parliamentary democracy as a means of serving our province and our country. Amen.
Introduction of visitors.
Thank you. Honourable members, it's my pleasure to introduce to you and to all those in the gallery as well, a friend of mine, my predecessor as a Speaker of this legislature, the former member for Calgary-Milliken, the 7th Speaker of Alberta, the Honourable Art Dickson.
Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions.
Member for Edmonton Avonmore.
Mr. Speaker, I would table for information of the members of this Assembly amendments that I will be proposing to Bill number 1, the Family Day Act.
Introduction of bills.
Member for Banff Cochrane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request leave to introduce a bill, the Provincial Court Amendment Act 1989. This act replaces Part 4 of the Act relating to small claims matters by increasing the monetary limit of the court to $4,000, by streamlining the judgment and appeal processes, and by changing the name of the court to the Civil Division of the Provincial Court.
The Honourable Member for Banff Cochrane has moved first reading of Bill 16, Provincial Court Amendment Act 1989. Those members in favour of first reading, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. Motion carries.
Bill number 16, Provincial Court Amendment Act 1989, introduced by the Honourable Member Mr. Evans, is now read a first time.
Deputy Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Bill 16 be placed on the order paper under Government Bills and Orders.
Having heard the motion by the Minister of Advanced Education, those in favour please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Motion carries.
Tabling returns and reports.
I'm pleased to table the 15th annual report of the Department of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs to the period ending March 31st, 1988.
Advanced Education.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to table copies of the annual report for 1987-88 on behalf of the Alberta College of Art.
Introduction of special guests.
Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce to you and to members of the Assembly this afternoon some 60 members of the Alberta Real Estate Association and member boards from around Alberta. In doing so, I'd like to thank them for their participation on behalf of all Albertans in ensuring a fair and open marketplace with the real estate industry. And I'd like to specifically introduce you and the Assembly to their executive, Bev Andre, the President, and I'd ask them to stand as I name them. Tim Grisick, the First Vice President, John Toole, the immediate past President, and Al Larson, the Executive Vice President. Would all of the guests that we have now stand, and please, I would ask my colleagues to give them the usual warm welcome.
Ministerial statement.
Thank you. Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, in the gallery today are 15 summer temporary employment program students from the now working with the Department of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs. These young people come from across Alberta, attend various institutions of post-secondary education in the province, and they're here to observe the members in action. I would ask that they stand and receive the welcome of the Assembly.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Mr. Speaker, to the Premier. Mr. Speaker, despite its promises of the past 2 years, this government has refused to answer any questions in this legislature on its involvement in the collapse of FIC and AIC. Mr. Speaker, it won't answer to the legislature, and it won't answer to the people of Alberta because, Mr. Speaker, it says it's developing an official response to the code report. But, Mr. Speaker, interesting enough, while it refuses to answer to elected representatives, members of the government caucus have felt free to offer their own versions of their government's position. During the emergency debate, for example, the Treasurer said that Mr. Code found no evidence of government negligence. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Environment said that the government was responsible and some damages should be awarded. The backbenchers say something else, Mr. Speaker, Lord knows what. But it's sort of a version of the Keystone Cops, Mr. Speaker. But my question to the Premier, in view of what is happening, in view of the fact that ministers are taking public positions, is the Premier prepared to answer questions on this matter today?
Mr. Speaker, as we've told the honourable member many times in the legislature, the government has received a very important report, is taking its time to assess it and review it, and will be making a full statement.
Mr. Speaker, the point I'm making is other people are commenting in the halls everywhere they go, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
And my question then to the Premier. The Minister of Environment has said publicly that the code report virtually ensures investors a legal victory. My question to the Premier, is the Minister of Environment speaking for this government, and does the Premier back him up on this matter?
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Minister of the Environment and myself have discussed this matter, but discussions between the Premier and Cabinet members are private.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this frankly, if it wasn't so serious, would be a laughing matter, Mr. Speaker. We have a total lack of leadership, and I want to ask the Premier, who is in charge of this government? Is it the Treasurer, it's the Minister of the Environment, or is it the backbenchers? Who's running it?
As I have pointed out, Mr. Speaker, and many times in the House as well, the people of Alberta have supported very strongly the government, and the leader and the honourable member should notice that.
Second main question, Leader of the Opposition.
Let's go to the polls right now, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, you bet.
I'd like to designate my second question, member from Edmonton, Jasper Place.
Yeah, no.
Mr. Speaker, in the period
Order, please. Edmonton, Jasper Place.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the period since the former Minister of the Environment fired Board Chairman John Elson over his refusal to recommend a sweetheart contract, the Swan Hills Hazardous Treatment Facilities experienced a number of operating problems. There's a 2,000 metric ton backlog of toxic solids, hundreds of thousands stored around the province. There have been design problems, unforeseen shortcomings, and mechanical problems, just to quote the management. I wonder if the Minister of the Environment has investigated to determine whether the PCB spill recorded at the Swan Hills site was a matter of the storage of the backlog materials or the handling of the materials on the site.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member also forgot to mention that this is the only government that had the courage and the foresight to go ahead with a plant of this nature in the first place, and I think that should be acknowledged. Mr. Speaker, on June 7th, a crack in the trench on the concrete bridge crane pad was discovered. And that pad is the area in which trucks transporting waste to the treatment center are unloaded. Samples of water under the crack were taken for analysis immediately. The degree of contamination of the water was 270 parts per million and 45 parts per million of PCBs. The thing to note here is that this matter was reported immediately, and it was reported immediately to the Swan Hills Community Liaison Committee, and all appropriate action is being taken to make sure that contaminants are contained and that the problem, the crack, is remedied as quickly as possible.
I'm sure it was an oversight, Mr. Speaker. I didn't hear the minister say whether it was a matter of the storage of the material or the handling of the material on the site. Is that in the script there somewhere?
Mr. Speaker, it pertains neither to the matter of storage nor the matter of transportation. It apparently pertains to a fault someplace that is now being investigated, and it will be remedied. I think the thing to be pointed out here, and is in as strong terms as possible, is that this is a new, innovative project, that no other province has seen fit to undertake. And yes, when you try something new and innovative, there are going to be problems along the way. We can examine those problems, learn from those problems, and still maintain our leadership position in this field.
I have to assume he doesn't know whether it's storage or handling. Has the minister reviewed the guaranteed return provision of the Bow Valley Services contract and the clause that requires the government to pay them 10 years profit if they get out of the thing, to see whether he has any options left in the face of what his predecessor has done, or does he have to simply pay for all time?
Mr. Speaker, like any innovative project, this government has seen fit to participate in a meaningful way with the private sector. And that is exactly what is happening with the Swan Hills project. We expect that in the near future, this facility, this one-of-its-kind facility, will start generating meaningful revenue, and at that time, hopefully, the honourable member will have nothing more to complain about.
On that issue. Member for Edmonton Glengarry, Leader of the Liberals.
Mr. Speaker, a recent decision of the United States International Trade Administration is alarming for Alberta businesses, hog producers for sure, but others as well. In determining a countervail, one of the factors that was used by the American investigators was the fact that the Alberta government had given or provided for certain loan guarantees to Alberta companies. The investigators specifically noted the following. First of all, that there was no standard criteria for approval or rejection of applicants for loans or guarantees. Secondly, that there was no method of determining why certain companies qualified and others did not. And further, they noted that one could not determine how many applicants there were for such assistance. Finally, that they noted that there was no standard application process. Businesses in a number of Alberta industries, such as oil and gas, pulp and paper, steel, meat packing, and high-tech, have also received loans and guarantees. My question is to the Minister of Economic Development. It's coming. Wait for it. Wait for it. Did the government, prior to the United States decision, consult with Americans or with GATT officials or anyone else to learn whether countervail would be levied on pork meat as a result of the loans or the loan guarantees to Gainers or to Fletchers?
Mr. Speaker, contrary to what the honourable member opposite might do, we develop our policies within this province. We don't consult with others as to what we might do as it relates to the diversification of our economy, recognizing the important spin-off benefits that has occurred with a number of our loan guarantees. I should indicate to the honourable member that yesterday, in a very thorough way, the Minister of Agriculture responded to this question, indicating to the questioner at that time that the jury was still out as it relates to this countervail, and hopefully by early September we will have a ruling that is favorable to our pork producers within this province. And I'm sure the Honourable Minister of Agriculture would like to supplement the answer.
You get the supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the Honourable Member for Edmonton Glengarry has done that much research. He should have seen the entire list of various programs across this country that were deemed to constitute the 3.6 cents countervail, and he would know very well that the one he is raising is a very minute part of the entire picture.
Mr. Speaker, I noticed that, and I hope that the Minister noticed the comments made by the investigators on loans and loan guarantees. My second question is also to the Minister of Economic Development. Noting that you didn't feel it necessary to inquire of anyone to ensure that no countervail would be imposed on any Alberta businesses or their products, what assurances can you give this Assembly, Mr. Minister, that countervail will in no way be applied to businesses who have obtained loans or loan guarantees in the high-tech development area, the pulp and paper industry, the forestry industry, the oil and gas...
Thank you. Get on.
Mr. Speaker, can I respond? The Honourable Member is incorrect when he indicates we did not inquire. I indicated to him I did not consult with the Americans, but we did inquire with our own legal counsel, and we are of what we consider the valid opinion whereby these loan guarantee programs that we have put in place are not countervaluable.
You've been a two-time loser on this, Mr. Minister. I'd like to know what you're prepared to do to assure this House that Alberta business people are not going to get another setback with respect to the definition of subsidy. What actions are you taking in that regard vis-a-vis the free trade deal?
Mr. Speaker, if the Honourable Member would review the record as thoroughly as he has done some research, he would find that I answered that question, I believe it was last week in the legislature, whereby in my former responsibilities we involved ourselves with the pork producers so that we could indicate the validity of what we are doing within this province, whereby we can also show the Americans the high level of support that they give their producers themselves, whereby we believe what we are doing does not contravene the trade agreement we have with the U.S. In addition to that, the agreement allows us access to means to resolve these disputes in a much more speedy way than what was the case in the past. And we're working that through with the pork producers themselves, and I'm happy to leave the Honourable Member with the assurance that we're going to work very closely with our producer groups who were very supportive of the trade agreement to make sure that they at all times have an advantageous position as it relates to production within this province.
Thank you. The member for Lacombe, followed by Calgary Mountain View.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Through you to the Minister of Environment, related to the Buffalo Lake Stabilization Project. Now, Mr. Speaker, that's a major project in central Alberta that affects not only the Buffalo Lake area, but many other towns in the Parvey Basin as far as their water supply is concerned, and thousands of acres of prime farmland that is flooded in the process. So it's not just only the Buffalo Lake Stabilization question, it's the whole area of central Alberta. Through that to the Minister, this has been a process that's been underway for a number of years, and it's a major concern, and it's getting more serious by the year as the water problems in those towns are getting to the urgent areas. Could you let the citizens of central Alberta know today, are we proceeding with that project or is it shelved?
Mr. Speaker, the project hasn't been shelved. As a matter of fact, we are proceeding with this important water management project. Certain portions of the project are being implemented already, certainly those related to flood control. With respect to the lake stabilization program, this matter is under study still. And hopefully we will have a report in the not-too-distant future.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Could we have some indication as to the timetable that we'll proceed with this? Is it this year or next fall or next year? It's been a number of years this has been going on, and we seem to always proceed to next year. Is this the year?
Well, yeah, hopefully this is the year. No, I'm sure this will be the year. As a matter of fact, this will be the year.
Thank you. Thank you. Honourable member, order please. With that three-time assurance, that's terrific. Final supplementary.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I appreciated that last answer. However, we've gone through, I think, around 18 studies, very in-depth studies, to the minister, Mr. Speaker. Hopefully, when he indicated that this was the year, that this wasn't the year for another study. Can we be assured that?
Mr. Speaker, indeed, there have been 29 studies on this particular matter.
This year?
Not this year. This involves, of course, a diversion of water from the Red Deer River to Buffalo Lake, and of course, there are some environmental problems that will have to be assessed through a full environmental impact assessment, and of course, that will be undertaken after the final report is submitted this year and soon this year. And once the environmental impact study has been completed, the deficiencies will be addressed, and hopefully we can get on with the project. But there will be no more studies.
Before the chair recognizes Calgary Mountain View, I would just like to quickly point out, let us as members stop using the word you. When you're pointing across the aisles at each other, you refer to the minister, the premier, or the member from such and such a location. That's occurred twice in the last two questioners. Thank you. Calgary Mountain View.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Minister of Tourism tabled a report on a now-defunct chess tournament in Calgary. His report states, Mr. Speaker, that his department was advised that satisfactory progress was being made by Emmer Curtola with respect to raising financing for the television production. Based on the strength of that assurance, his department let $50,000 go on May the 3rd. Then on May the 4th, the very next day, the City of Calgary and the Associated Canadian Travelers put the whole project on ice for 30 days while they attempted to find out how Emmer Curtola would put in place the $300,000 equity they were required to put into the project. My question to the Minister is this, Mr. Speaker. Who gave the assurance to the Department of Tourism that satisfactory progress was being made when subsequent events proved that that was clearly not the case?
Mr. Speaker, that's part and parcel of the report. Under contract, I believe the dates is the date the proponent received the check. The contract date when it was due was April 15th, and the payment was overdue because of the checking that the department was doing.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the minister is not answering the question in terms of who it was that gave...
Thank you, honourable member. Order. First comment is out of order, so let's have the question.
Stating the obvious, Mr. Speaker, the minister who gave this department the assurances on which the department relied and got comfort and gave $50,000 of taxpayers' money to this project, which then disappeared right down the drain. Who gave them that assurances?
Mr. Speaker, I don't know if all the members of the legislature has had an opportunity to read the report, but that's very well covered in the report. The new contract with Associated Canadian Travelers had just recently been signed, and the budget figures and the tally that we had at the time and the discussions with not only the City of Calgary but ACT showed that the project was underway, and the check which was due on, I'm told it was due on April 15th, was released, and it was received by the proponents in May.
Mr. Speaker, to the minister, is the minister covering up the identity of this person because it was clearly misleading for them to give that assurance to the Department of Tourism, and on which they then gave $50,000 of taxpayers' money? Is that the reason that he's covering up the identity of that individual?
Right on.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think you're talking about an individual. The department had discussions with all the parties involved. I just mentioned who they were. There was just a new contract at the time with the Alberta Canadian Travelers, and it was discussions the department had with the City of Calgary and ACT that gave them the assurances to allow the final payment to be made.
Calgary Buffalo, followed by Bow Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have another example of how poor government management is costing this province millions of dollars. 2 years ago, we learned that the provincial government was failing to access millions of dollars from federal programs for women's shelters, and now we find that the province has not been claiming $1 to $1.5 million per year, which is available under the Canada Assistance Plan for our civil legal aid programs, even though other provinces have been getting millions. And in the meantime, we have 4,500 needy Albertans a year who are being denied civil legal aid for important legal problems. I'm wondering if the Attorney General could tell this House, and particularly the provincial treasurer, why the provincial government has failed to claim millions of dollars of federal money for civil legal aid under the Canada Assistance Plan when it's there for the asking.
Mr. Speaker, the program that delivers legal aid in Alberta is a joint effort through the Government of Alberta and the Law Society of Alberta. And a study was commissioned last year for the Law Society to do a study to find out how proficient we were in the program we're delivering now, and to make suggestions for additions. And I'm glad to see that the honourable member from Calgary Buffalo is so alert and prescient to see that civil legal aid is required.
Well, this has been going on for years, Mr. Speaker, and I wonder whether the Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs is prepared to acknowledge that it's the responsibility of his department to access these federal funds under these kinds of programs. So will he undertake quick action so that the people of this province stop losing millions and millions of dollars because of their mismanagement?
The honourable member should read the definition of the role and responsibility of the Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs, and it would be worthwhile looking at the report which I filed today with the Assembly. He's wrong, as often happens with him.
Well, the minister should talk to his department for a change, and he'd find differently. Now, I'm wondering whether, back to the Attorney General, whether the Attorney General recognizes that many needy Albertans are being refused civil legal aid because of a shortage of funds, and whether or not he will commit to improving the civil legal aid program in the event that the government gets around to doing its business and accessing these federal funds.
Mr. Speaker, I think that goes back to my first answer, that yes, the study has been done, recommendations have been made to the Law Society of Alberta and the Government of Alberta. We are now in the process of trying to devise a plan that will allow more access to civil, and I thank the honourable member for his representation.
Thank you. Bow Valley, followed by Edmonton Centre, then Calgary Northwest.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Energy. And last spring, Mr. Speaker, the Department of Energy established a procedure for issuing ammonite shell agreements, and this is to permit the excavation of these fossils, which in turn become a very high-priced gemstone. My first question, Mr. Speaker, is can the Minister advise the Assembly on the progress of issuing these ammonite shell agreements?
Mr. Speaker, the issue of the ammonite mining is an important one, and it is a historical paleontological resource, as my honourable colleague, the Minister of Culture, pointed out to me today. And I should point out that my responsibility in this area, Mr. Speaker, has to do with the disposition and certification and transferring of titles is the area of the Minister of Culture. My area is having regard with my responsibilities for leasing and our experience in that area. Until this spring, Mr. Speaker, there was no system in place for permits and rights to quarry or mine for ammonites. We now have in place a system. If there are one application only to mine or quarry or look for ammonites, then we do negotiate an agreement with the individual. If there are more than one application, Mr. Speaker, then we will put it out to public tender the same way we do our oil and gas rights. Basically that's the mechanism in place, and it is there to protect this important resource.
Mr. Speaker, in Bow Valley constituency, the big concern is the landowners' rights. And does the collector's permits infringe on the landowners' rights, or do they need any to deal with them also?
Mr. Speaker, the manner in which individuals receive a right of entry is the same as they would on freehold or Crown natural gas rights. That is, they must get a right of entry permit or permission from the landowner, and if the landowner does refuse, then the individual who is seeking to mine or quarry or collect the ammonite must then go to the Surface Rights Board. If the Surface Rights Board then hears and makes a decision as to the right of entry permit, there is then compensation to the landowner so that the individual can then come onto the property. No different than a surface lease or the Surface Rights Board manner of arbitration for right of entry procedures.
The original concern from the people that I've talked to about it is, it's my understanding that it's some different to an oil company in that they have to go in and stake a claim, and then they bid on that particular claim. Now, some of the farmers and ranchers in that area are having a problem because these people come down the river in a canoe and stake out a claim. They don't know who they are, they don't know where they came from, or else they drive through their property and don't believe they need permission to drive through there to stake out a claim.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that may have been the case prior to the regulation being put in place, the manner in which the department deals with it. At the present time, individuals are in trespass if they have not received a right, the disposition of the rights from the Crown, or if they have not received a right of entry permit from the surface owner of the land. Failing that, then there are laws against trespass, and I'm sure the full weight of the law will be brought to bear. I know that my colleague, the Minister of Culture, has some comments about the background to this issue, and I'm sure he may wish to supplement my answer.
Culture, multiculturalism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It may be useful for all members to just have a little bit of background on the ammonite business. In actual fact, what we're talking about here are the shells of squids that, according to some estimates, are 75 million years old. We're involved now in joint management between Culture and Multiculturalism and the Department of Energy, as my colleague has described, land management. We're in charge of making sure that the historical resources are retained for the Crown. And the process is very much as it is for oil, because these squid didn't quite make it all the way to oil. You discover, you bid, you negotiate, you're involved in surface rights, and if all the ministerial orders for disposition are in place and everything else is proper, and those who are mining for ammonite are trespassing, a simple recourse, as my colleague so ably described, call the cops.
Edmonton Centre. Edmonton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bill 5, which provides for the privatization of hospitals in the province, has now been followed by Bill 17, introduced yesterday by the Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services, which calls for that minister to work with any public or private owner of a healthcare facility to provide renovations or other services. But just to back up and check with the Minister of Health, now since she has on record as of June 19th said that we certainly have the potential now with Bill 5 of moving certain facilities from being operated and managed by the Department of Health to some other option, will the Minister of Health confirm today that that option that she has in mind is in fact turning certain health care facilities over to the private for-profit sector.
Mr. Speaker, I made very clear on June the 19th that it was certainly not our intention to act beyond the capabilities that existed within legislation. I also committed to this House that I would review our intent with the wording of Bill 5, and when the bill receives second reading, which I am planning, I understand, will take place on Thursday evening, we will be discussing the matter further.
Well, sometimes the patience of Job wouldn't be enough to deal with this lot, Mr. Speaker, but I'm wondering, it's interesting to note that while some hospitals in southern Alberta are cracking up, others, including the ones, the health facilities to be privatized, have in fact received recent extensive renovations. Will the Minister of Health confirm that over $13 million has been spent over the last 3 years to renovate Rosehaven, Claresholm, and Raymond in order to make them more saleable to the private sector?
No, I certainly won't, Mr. Speaker, and certainly the maintenance and the upkeep of all health facilities in this province is a priority of this government and one which we will not fall back on. But to suggest that it is for the purpose that the honourable member suggests is simply wrong.
You're responding to the amendment. That's right. It's the lack of trust, Mr. Speaker, which many Albertans have, which begs these questions. So did the Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services, who tabled Bill 17 yesterday. Will that minister confirm that under Section 2 of his new amendment, he can now provide funding for renovations of healthcare facilities, including those which in future can be privatized under the current wide-ranging provisions of Bill 5 unamended?
No, that isn't correct, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we introduced Bill 17. We had reading number 1. To this point in time, the minister responsible for the Amendment Act has not had an opportunity to introduce it in second reading, nor to provide the rationale or the explanation with respect to the certain sections in it. But as the honourable member from Edmonton Centre has raised it today, perhaps I should read into the record exactly what Section 13.1 says, Mr. Speaker, so that there's absolutely no misunderstanding anywhere with respect to this.
Yeah, thank you. No. Calgary Northwest, followed by Cypress Redcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A few weeks ago, I drew to the attention of the House my concern about the closing of the glass plant in Redcliffe because of the potential loss of jobs and also the concern about the damage that it would do to the glass recycling industry in the province. And now we see that in the city of Edmonton, up to 100 tons of colored glass per week are being deposited in the dump site at the Clover Bar dump. And it's further indicated in a report that this process could be stopped and eliminated if there was a local glass grinding and cleaning plant within the province of Alberta. My question is to the Minister of Environment today. My question is, does the minister propose to allow this dumping to continue and the subsequent presumably increased dumping that will happen once this plant closes down completely?
Well, Mr. Speaker, landfilling recyclable materials of any kind is possibly the worst solution to a problem. But if there are no markets, something has to be done with these products if indeed storage space is at a premium. I can tell the honourable member that my department's working on a fairly comprehensive recycling program, and we hope to have that program ready for announcement in about 4 months' time. And we hope to address this issue of glass grinding facilities, de-inking plants, and all the other kinds of infrastructure that need to be put in place if indeed recycling is to become a meaningful program in this province.
Well, my supplementary question to the minister then is, will the minister today commit to take immediate action to stop the dumping and presumably store the glass somewhere until the long-term proposals that he's mentioned can be implemented?
Well, I would love to, but I can't. It's one of those things, Mr. Speaker, where if storage space is at a premium and there simply isn't enough storage space and there aren't the markets to take the glass, something has to be done with it. And I can't give a guarantee that it won't be landfilled, other than to say I agree with the member that landfilling is probably the worst possible solution, but it's a solution that unfortunately has to be looked at out of necessity.
Use 4-liter plastic jugs.
Well, then my final supplementary would be how the minister can reconcile the use of landfill sites in light of the November 10th, 1988 news release by the former Environment Minister, which said in part, and I quote, "It is important to our province to keep our environment clean and diminish, I emphasize that, the usage of landfill."
Well, the honourable member might be well advised that notwithstanding some deficiencies that we hope to correct within the recycling field, this province was a leader in recycling programs in this country. And I'm sure that my predecessor was referring to a normal situation and not a severe situation. In this particular case, we have a severe situation where storage is at a premium and where landfilling has become the solution that is only possible at this particular time.
Cypress Redcliffe, followed by Edmonton Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Associate Minister of Agriculture. Sometime in the past, the minister, as an MLA, introduced into the House and piloted through the House the Soil Conservation Act. Later, after being appointed minister and being responsible for that act, in answer to a question I asked her about the soil conservation agreement with the federal government, the minister made some comments related to negotiations were ongoing with that agreement. I wonder if she can inform the House if indeed the federal government has signed that agreement.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to tell the honourable member for Cypress Redcliffe and indeed the Assembly that very important initiative, the Soil Conservation Initiative, has been signed by the Canadian and the federal officials. And I want to thank the member for Cypress Redcliffe who has pressed very hard on this agreement on behalf of his constituents and indeed all Albertans.
Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the minister can outline for the Assembly the timetable that we can now expect relating to that act, because we are probably 4 to 5 months behind in what was projected of taking place over the next 3 years.
I could tell the honourable member, Mr. Speaker, that we are pressing ahead very quickly with this agreement because of the very strong commitment that our Premier and our government has had to this initiative. We have been doing the planning process in our province and in our department for some time. I would expect that letters will go out to the various agricultural service boards and other government and non-government agencies that work in this direction in the very near future, perhaps as early as this week.
Mr. Speaker, I wonder if then the minister can suggest to the Assembly when the man on the street will see concrete action as a result of this agreement.
The man on the street or the man in the field will see concrete action very quickly because, as the honourable members should be aware, the federal or Canada-Alberta agreement involves some $34.8 million aimed at fighting soil degradation. Our contribution to this will be $12 million over a 3-year period. And if the figures don't add up, it's because the province of Alberta has received considerable credit for soil conservation initiatives that we have taken. So actually our conservation program is in place, will be improved and enhanced, and there is a coordination occurring in the Conservation Development Branch of Alberta Agriculture to see that this proceeds very quickly because it is a very pressing problem in our province and indeed in Canada.
Edmonton Kingsway, followed by Calgary McKnight and Calgary Glenmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Minister of Economic Development and Trade introduced enabling legislation for the purpose of creating a regional airport authority. Bill number 14. Theoretically, this legislation was to be based on the recommendations of the Regional Airports Task Force Association. The authors of that task force focused their attention on the feasibility of a local airport authority, the ownership of which was to be vested in the local municipal governments. Given the task force's stated preference for a community-owned local authority model, why is it necessary for this legislation to include Section 23, a section which effectively allows for the privatization of the whole operation?
The detail of a question such as that related to a bill yet to be discussed is really not in order. It's not really in order. Order. Thank you. Take it as a general question related to the whole bill, but stop asking about specifics.
Mr. Speaker, hopefully we'll have the opportunity to debate in depth this legislation when we do bring it before the House for second reading and committee study. If the honourable member wishes at that time to make amendments, I'm sure we'll give due consideration to his thoughts.
If it is the intention of this government to allow for the privatization of the airports, why don't they just admit it and right up front and be straight with the people of Alberta and say so?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable members should not be so quick to judge us by their own traits, whereby they are suggesting we have some hidden agenda. If they will examine the record, they will find that this legislation was put together at the request of the task forces that were established both in Edmonton and Calgary, so that we could have a greater economic impact from the air travel within this province. It contributes approximately 4% now to our gross domestic product within this province. We feel that can be increased with greater local input. I say with all sincerity, if the honourable member has concerns, we look forward to doing our level best to address those concerns when we do have the bill before us at debate stage in either second reading or committee.
It says right in Section 23, an authority shall not sell, lease, or exchange all or substantially all of its assets unless the disposition is approved by special resolution. So they have the right to sell. My question is, given that this Act in no way limits those at the receiving end of Section 23, that is the buyers, can the Minister tell this House whether this Act and its provisions for public accountability, community involvement, and community development would apply to the individual buying those assets?
Mr. Speaker, as I'm sure the honourable member is aware, the municipal airport within the City of Edmonton falls under the jurisdiction of the City of Edmonton. The international airport just south of the City of Edmonton falls under the federal government. There presently is in place an agreement whereby on a lease basis they will assume the responsibility of those airports. If the honourable member has concerns as it relates to ownerships, he should maybe talk to the present owners. It is not our plan, but what we are doing is working very closely. We're working very closely with the authorities concerned so that we can have a greater economic stimulus from the airports within the province of Alberta.
Calgary McKnight. Calgary McKnight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, Albertans have become aware of a situation wherein 30 Edmonton high school students were caught cheating on the 1988 high school mathematics exam. This week, Alberta Education reacted with a weak and totally inappropriate compromise, allowing those students who cooperated after being discovered to retain their marks despite the fact those marks were obtained through cheating. Those students who did not cooperate have been given the opportunity to rewrite the exam or to use a school-based mark on their high school transcript. My question is to the Minister of Education. Will the Minister advise his department that such action is totally unacceptable, is uneven, is unjust, and require all the guilty parties to rewrite the exam?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, may I tell all members of the Assembly that this government and that this Minister of Education finds that anybody who cheats in an examination is taking action which is unacceptable and cannot in any way be condoned by any of us in this Assembly. And we have so advised all of the students that were allegedly involved or admitted involvement in cheating in a June 1988 Mathematics 30 exam. In order to get to the bottom of it, Mr. Speaker, we were out to find the culprit who leaked the exam, who got a hold of it and sold it. And that was our first objective. And in finding that information, we found that the investigators had to inform those students with whom they spoke that in order to get the information, no action would be taken against those students. And that got us to the bottom of the problem, found the culprit, and that man has been charged and will be appearing in court in the days ahead. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to say to all members of this Assembly that we do not condone that kind of action. The letter of repudiation, a strong letter, has gone to all 30 students, and that will remain on those students' files until they purge their misdoing, their misguided action, and will stay on their file until they rewrite the Mathematics 30 exam.
Time for question period has expired. May we have unanimous consent to complete this series of questions? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Calgary McKnight.
I find it difficult to understand why all 12 students who became stooges would have had to be paid off. Does the minister realize that by these actions, he's telling our young people that it is okay to cheat as long as they inform on their cohorts after they have been caught? Is this the message he wants to send?
No, Mr. Speaker, it is not, in no uncertain terms. And we must, and we have informed all of those students that that blight on their student record will stay there, no matter whether they were the 12 who participated or the 18 who did not participate and who we suspect cheated on the exam. That blight will remain on their record until they purge their record by rewriting the exam. Now, for the 18, Mr. Speaker, the 18 who did not participate in the investigation, we have advised them that their diploma exam mark will now be noted as incomplete on their transcript, that their school-awarded mark will stand, and they can, as I say, purge their record by rewriting the exam on August the 16th, when the Math 30 supplemental exam will be sacked. And the other part of it, Mr. Speaker, is that those new transcripts for those 18 students will be sent to all of those bodies, all of those institutions, and all of those people who received them in the past. So a new transcript will be sent to those institutions. But I repeat, Mr. Speaker, we do not condone this kind of behavior.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I would now like to ask the minister if he would commit to the creation of a small, short-term task force to study the problem of disciplining cheaters and to formulate an intelligent policy for dealing with any future such incidents.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the honourable member's assistance and offer of assistance, and she will be able to participate in such a discussion when the estimates of the Department of Education are before the Committee of Supply this evening. And I welcome some comments and some suggestions from that member. But, Mr. Speaker, let it be known on the public record that I have informed the Deputy Minister of Education and all those involved that in the future this kind of plea bargaining, if I may use that word, shall not be acceptable and should not be used except under the most extreme circumstances, and that again, that we will not put ourselves, we will avoid at all costs putting ourselves in a position where this kind of behavior is in any way seen by anybody to be acceptable, because, Mr. Speaker, it is not.
Thank you. Points of order arising out of question period. One from yesterday, Cypress Radcliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rose at the end of question period yesterday on a matter related to comments made by the member for Edmonton Jasper Place of what he had thought I had said on a matter of Middle Sandhills ecological area. I've reviewed Hansard and the Blues and still maintain that the quote that was attributed to me, or the comment that was attributed to me, I did not make, and I believe the question that was asked of me by the reporter was, did you speak to the minister before such an action took place? I had said, yes, I did. So I don't know how out of that they could take that I would have the power to cancel the meeting to cancel that meeting.
Okay, so Edmonton Jasper, please.
If the member would be good enough to clarify what comment of mine he finds objectionable, I'll consider withdrawing it, but I don't understand at this point what he objects to.
The Chair just regards it as being a discrepancy as to the facts, a difference of opinion between two members. No point of order. Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I rose to make a point of order when the Honourable Leader of the Liberal Party persisted in his use of the terms "you" and "minister" and the use of the personal in the Assembly rather than addressing the House through the Chair. Was being adopted by the Leader of the Liberal Party. Your Honour subsequently made the point to ask honourable members to use the usual form of parliamentary reference, and I therefore withdraw any point of order. I hope that it is a lesson, however, that honourable members will on all sides will keep in mind.
Thank you. The Chair did look at Hansard yesterday, and one honourable member used that personal pronoun 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times within 2 questions. Hopefully the member will take that under consideration. Also, one other member from the government bench used the word "you," and another one later on used the word "she." So indeed, perhaps we'll get back to the proper parliamentary form. While we're at it, perhaps in both committees of supply and committee of the whole, as well as in the House, we will indeed keep referring to members by the name of their constituency rather than by their names, and also that the constituency names are given correctly. And one footnote to that as well is when referring to departments of government, perhaps the full and complete title will be used as well. Thank you. Orders of the day.